Well, we've got details of these and many more. If you stay with me for the next 20 minutes, you can also share with us your comments whilst these stories roll on our social media platforms, TV3 Ghana. And now let's begin with the IMF. The International Monetary Fund's Executive Board approved a $3 billion extended credit for Ghana, allowing for an immediate disbursement of about $600 million. The program is expected to help Ghana address its economic crisis and regain investor confidence. My colleague Sani Abdulrahman has been monitoring the event from Washington, the U.S., and had this to say.
Well, a smile on the face of Ken Oforiatta and his team for pulling the deal through. I'm so sure the IMF managing director would also be smiling because of her public advocacy to help Ghana secure the loan. The approval of the program, we are learning, allows for an immediate disbursement of the first tranche of $600 million. The IMF Communication Department will release a statement anytime from now, which will be followed by a news conference tomorrow afternoon. This obviously marks an important step for Ghana, but Ken Oforiatta and his team would have to keep a good fiscal posture and provide favorable terms to creditors to avoid any sort of issues or protracted negotiations, looking at the case of Zambia and the rest. The IMF itself has said on its website a while ago that the next step is for the official creditor committee to agree with the Ghanaian authorities the specific modalities of how official creditors intend to deliver debt relief consistent with the fund program parameters. So while the government celebrates this loan approval, it has a lot of work to do in order to keep the program running and ultimately retain investor confidence.
Now let's get some reaction, shall we? The Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, Professor John Garcia, has been speaking about Ghana's breakthrough with the IMF deal. He thinks the deal will restore investor confidence in the country. Take a listen.
After the board approval, we now wait for disbursement of the monies and then other technical engagement with the government of Ghana in the management of the economy. That is what we await. We were told that $600 million will be released very quickly. And after that, performance benchmark will be adhered to. That will trigger the release of further tranches going forward. But there will be a joint press conference of the IMF and the government of Ghana, represented by the finance minister and the governor of the Bank of Ghana. And that press conference will make things clear to all of us as to whether there is some other conditions precedent to the disbursements of the first tranche or not. So those are the things we are waiting for. And I must indicate that this is just the first leg of the engagement. This is now giving the IMF the authority to lend to Ghana and the authority to engage more than just mere membership activities that they have been doing that culminate in Article 4 consultative report. So now it gives the IMF a further mandate to watch over the economy of Ghana. So that is where we are now.
Now, away from IMF-related issues, let's head to Parliament because a minority has described the Supreme Court's order to have the ASEAN North MP's credentials expunged from Parliament's records as a slap in the face of democracy. Here is Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Komla Kluche looking at the reaction of the minority after the Supreme Court's unanimous order to the Speaker.
Will this be the end of the road for a man whose desire is to represent his constituents but never really did? He aided the NDC minority on the night of the inauguration of the 8th Parliament, despite being served summons challenging his eligibility in a dual citizenship suit. A torturous moment, yet he said he was very expectant. Good afternoon. Are you in high spirits?
My spirit?
Yeah.
Well, I cannot actually comment on any matter that is in the courts. but I can tell you I'm in a very high spirit.
Do you have any word for your constituents?
No, they know what I'm doing here. My constituents speaks for themselves.
Okay. After a long, winding battle from the High Court to the Supreme Court, it appears Gyekye Quayson may not be allowed into the presence of the legislature with that express order from the Supreme Court. The minority has reacted sharply, describing the ruling by the 7 justices as a slap in the face of democracy. The minority leader, Dr. Kesel Atoforsen, maintains Gyekye Quayson was not a dual citizen as of the time he filed his nomination and became a member of parliament. While they study the reasons of the court in deciding the case, a further line of action will be considered and pursued. For now, the registrar of the Supreme Court will have to notify the Speaker in writing on the decision of the court. Komla Kluche, TV3 News, Accra.
Well, if you're just tuning in, you're watching the first bulletin of the day here on Newday on TV3 with me, Josh Quinn. We're live on DSTV channel 279. Let's know what you make of stories that have been aired so far. Your comments and views are welcome. Go into our social media platforms, TV3 Ghana. Drop your comments, we'll surely read them and share them to the rest of the world. In some more news this morning, some illegal miners at Kolete in Takoso in the Brim North District of the Eastern Region, where 7 people died after a mining pit caved in on Monday, May 15, insists they cannot stop the illegality since it is their only source of livelihood. My colleague Godwin Asidiba was in the community after the disaster and reports.
It's a trek to get to the Takoso illegal mining site.
We have been walking for the past 40 minutes, climbing up the mountains here in Kolete to get to an illegal mining site where it caved in on some illegal miners. Unfortunately, as of now, 7 people have been confirmed dead and 3 are in a critical condition. We are getting there to know exactly what the situation is.
The illegal mining site has been abandoned today due to a disaster. This is a waterlogged area and close to the Brem River. But illegal miners here take advantage of the departure of the light-skilled miners to go deep down the pits, prospecting for gold.
You can find about 10 of these illegal mining pits in Takoso. You can clearly tell that as of yesterday, maybe there have been people in here who have actually chiseled through the rocks.
Illegal mining, or galamsey as it's called here, is taking place in countless sites like this in the Eastern Region. Few minutes walk from the Takoso mining site, a large cocoa farm has been destroyed to make way for the activities. The once lush cocoa trees have given way for craters filled with muddy water. This is the story of a community digging its way to prosperity. 53-year-old John traveled from the capital Accra here 8 months ago to make life better for himself.
7, 8. I know the bra.
The collapse of the pit killed most of his friends, and this is making him take a different decision to return to Accra. Kwame Boachi is busily washing through the sand particles, but sad due to the incident he witnessed. He's found some gold today. Not even the accident that has killed 7 miners would convince them to stop.
A
drive through the community, and one could tell residents and affected families of the tragedy are down in the dumps. Esther Dede is one of them. Married to Kwabna Jonas for 27 years, she's in agony, trying hard to believe her husband died such a mysterious death. The Quality Unit Committee Secretary, Emmanuel Autry, says This is not the first time a pit collapsed on illegal miners in the area.
But ebisi sanso a ebi ananipa mienu na eyiwom na dom ko ayaresabia.
At the Holy Family Hospital, the deputy administrator confirmed 7 bodies were brought in.
The ambulance team brought all the dead. Out of the 7, we have 4 relatives who have come to identify their bodies.
The impact of Galamsey on Ghana continued to be immense, from polluting water bodies to devastating the environment. But in the accidents and deaths, this week has shown it is the way it is taking away young lives that may be its devastating impact. Godwin Asidiba, TV3 News, Colete, Eastern Region.
And our drivers at the 37 bus station are still reluctant in adhering to the directive by the Ghana Private Road Transport Union JPRTU and the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council to reduce transport fares by 10%. The directive, which took effect on Monday, still has not been effected at most stations, which has left commuters frustrated. Judith Awatretando reports.
For the past few days, we've been gauging the reactions from most drivers as well as passengers on the announcement of a 10% reduction in transport fares across most bus terminals. Now, we're here currently at the 37 station. Earlier this morning, I was at La Paz and it hadn't started yet. Most of the drivers were, in fact, angry about the reduction or the announcement of the reduction. So we'll be speaking to some drivers to know what they think. Now, I must say, at the end, 10% reduction and started.
Okay, that's it. I go so yet. But I was like, who said, and your friend Kwan Yajuma. Say, okay, fuel, and a Yajuma, can't wait to see, or better me fully full tank. That's a break at my Yajuma.
So he is speaking about the cost of goods on the market. This has been one of the worries of most drivers over the past few days. Cost of goods, cost of spare parts. They say these things are still expensive on the market. They are not reducing. And so why should fuel or transport prices reduce as well? Hello, Patrick Felsen.
Isaac Pro.
Now, I want to dream Hussein. I want more reduce prices now.
Unze, Ubia Shamras, Yempen for no Bibian train. Na impedi fonso bi am meka bibia nche yentumi fa ye pe entete so ebse obia ni on chambers Ghana obia chambers so bet eto obia mbra na di draft for nko so brefu kura ton 350 nti anya de bet so anti say impedi for be cancel say ni say.
So this driver is saying that they are not going to reduce the prices as well because things on the market are expensive. He is asking government to start reducing prices from iron rod to cement to, in fact, a ball of kinky before they think of reducing transport fares. Hello, sir. Pacho, who can GPRTU for?
Yes.
But one of the statements ne buy inti aden as I say mom pese mo beye.
GPRTU penimbia mbeke say yenteso because the entity say bibi ba omo cloud the letter be di kan ablayen say oh Flaminda say ekweside monteso.
He is a GPRT executive as well, and they are the ones supposed to implement the transport fare reduction. But he's saying that they have not had any letter from the leaders of the GPRTU, and so, of course, they are not going to reduce these transport fares. So we're going to be speaking to some of the passengers as well. You can see them lined up here, ready to get buses. Okay, how has been your experience today?
Yeah, I was coming from Afarawa, around Ashama. They've been taking the fare 14 cities from Afarawa to Accra here. But this morning when I was coming, I was thinking, say, they will reduce the fare. But the fare wasn't reduced.
And Kay, what has been your experience?
When they increase it, they will increase it. But once they reduce it, you have to reduce it. But still, we are not seeing anything. Me, I'm from Tema. Every day when I'm coming, they take me 10 cities. But it's the same amount they are taking right now.
So you heard them right. These are some passengers I've just spoken to. They are quite angry about the situation. Drivers have decided not to reduce transport fares as directed by the GPRTU in a statement by 10%. They have decided not to do it today, and we do not know when they would be implementing this directive. Judith Awatretando for TV3 News.
Well, the team will be, visiting some stations today to monitor if this very directive will be implemented today. We will still, follow up and then update you subsequently in our bulletins. And now let's talk sports. Pep Guardiola will face Inter Milan Simon Inzaghi on June 10 at the Atatürk Olympic Stadium in Istanbul, Turkey, for a chance to win this third Champions League trophy and the first for Man City. Pep and his team defeated Carlos Ancelotti and Real Madrid 5-1 on aggregate Wednesday night. Ore Kwampafo has more in the following report.
Manchester City reached the Champions League final for the first time since 2021 when they lost to Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea in Portugal by 1-0. Well, they returned to the big stage after beating Real Madrid in the semi-finals, and potentially they're on the verge of making history as they could end the season with the treble. They're within touching distance of the Premier League trophy, which they could win this weekend if they beat Chelsea, and they're also in the FA Cup final to face their rivals, Manchester United. It's been a remarkable turnaround for Pep Guardiola's men, who have struggled since the start of the season, and things seem to have elevated pretty quickly on the turn of the year, and they've been imperious and unstoppable since the beginning of 2023. The mastermind behind that, of course, is Guardiola, who himself made history after beating Real Madrid by 4-0 in the second leg of the semi-final. He becomes the youngest and fastest manager to reach 100 Champions League wins, doing it in just 160 games. Now, of course, before the season ends, he would wish that he can get his 101st win in the Champions League, and that would essentially mean that he goes home with his third Champions League title. After the game, he also stated in the post-match conference that facing an Italian team is not the nicest gift, and he's aware of the threat that they would face on the other side, that's Inter Milan. The Italian side reached the final of the Champions League for the first time in 13 years. Coincidentally, when they also won in 2010, they did it with Mourinho, and that also wrapped up a treble that Manchester City are hoping to replicate. For Inter, they went past their rivals, beating them 3-0 on aggregate, and they would be a tough side to crack, especially under Simone Inzaghi, who took charge 2 seasons ago. In those 2 seasons, he's won 2 Supercoppa Italianas. He's also won 1 Coppa Italia, and now he's reached the Champions League final with Inter Milan against all the odds. They would definitely go into that game as underdogs, but we've seen various stories of underdog teams shocking the big dog in the final of the UEFA Champions League. It's all left to play for: Pep Guardiola versus Inzaghi, Manchester City versus Inter Milan in Istanbul later this year.
And now to the foreign front. Our overheating world is likely to break a key temperature limit for the first time over the next few years, scientists predict, and researchers say there's now a 66% chance we will pass the 1.5 Celsius global warming threshold between now and 2027. The chances are rising due to the emissions from human activities and a likely El Nino weather pattern later this year. If the world passes the limit, scientists stress the breach, while worrying, will likely be temporary.